Hello to you and welcome to Adelante Chicago. Bienvenidos. I'm Lourdes Duarte. Thank you so much for joining us today. We begin with an organization that's gathering the support of statewide business leaders, hoping to help steer the conversation of immigration reform on a national level. Joining us to explain is Irakere Picon. He's IBIC's Director of Legal Services. Very nice to have you here with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, this organization was established back in 2012, so a few years ago. It has now grown to what it is today. How did it come about? Why?
Essentially, in 2012, we saw the need for pushing more for immigration reform and involving the business community. For a long time, the issue was focused on being a moral issue, the right thing to do. And we felt that it was important to have the business community also have a voice on that issue because of the impact that the immigrant community plays in our state economy and our country's economy. And so from that, several business leaders, organizational leaders, and experts on the issue came together and decided to put together this coalition of business owners, but also business leaders and associations to give voice of the importance of having some sort of comprehensive immigration reform.
So give me some examples of how the business community is getting involved in this conversation, because it's not just, Chicago has a huge Latino community, but it's not just about Chicago, it's about what's happening statewide and on a national level.
Absolutely. So the Illinois Business Immigration Coalition is part of a larger coalition known as the American Business Immigration Coalition. Illinois was the first chapter. We're now in Texas and Florida and Colorado and several other states, but essentially what we help to do is guide the business community to sort of advocate, to urge their leaders, to urge their partners to really push for policy changes. And it all comes from, obviously, the impact that immigration has on their businesses, whether it's import, export, the workforce, whether it's preparing the next generation of entrepreneurs and engineers and technicians. The fact that immigrants have played such an important role in our history is something that the business community realizes. So many of our Fortune 500 companies and Fortune 100 companies were established and created by immigrants. And that continues to be a fact today. And so immigrants have played an important role, and the business community realizes that and wants to lend their voice to this issue.
Yeah, and I imagine what you've noticed is that the business community, because they've got dollars behind their movement or their work, a lot of times government officials or politicians or lawmakers are more willing to pay attention, right?
Exactly, and that's one of the things that I think has been helpful in terms of really bringing up this voice is that they tend to have the bigger donations and the biggest sort of voices on this issue when it comes to contacting elected officials. But I think it also helps the general public see that immigrants aren't some sort of second-class citizens. They're not in the shadows. They're part of our day-to-day lives, whether it's in school, in hospitals, at our jobs, our neighbors, at the local grocery store. They play an important role, and one of those roles is also being part of the economy. And so the business community has been really helpful in terms of Illinois. We're partners with the Illinois Chamber of Commerce, the Illinois Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, the Illinois Restaurant Association. WeatherTech is one of our members. And so you have these large employers, but we also have some of the smaller employers, the mom and pop restaurants, the stores, and they also understand the importance of lending their voice to this issue. You
talked about having chapters in Florida and Texas, but I would imagine the conversation in those states is much different than the conversation we're having here in Illinois. It's just different, I guess, ideas or topics that you're focusing on.
Absolutely. We're lucky to live in a state that's been very immigrant friendly for several decades now. And one of the states that's on the forefront of passing pro-immigrant state policies and legislations. And so we find that here in Illinois, we don't have to struggle with convincing people that it's the right thing to do, that it's the economic right thing to do as well. It's more of really mobilizing the energy, especially as you get farther away from Chicago. This topic isn't as discussed, or there isn't enough knowledge around it. And so in those areas, I would say it's similar to Texas or Florida, where you have a little more conservative types of views. But when we talk about the impact that it has for the economy, whether it's in the local county or it's the state in general, they realize that it's something that has to be addressed, if anything, because of the economic reasons.
Okay, here in Chicago, we have a new mayor. What has her role been in addressing some of the issues that this organization has brought up, and how is she working with you? And not only just, Lori Lightfoot, but even we have a new governor as well, J.B. Pritzker. So how has that relationship been like?
It's been really, really great. I would say that we hit the ground running with both Governor Pritzker and Mayor Lightfoot. Governor Pritzker has been a very instrumental part of IBIC. He was actually on the board at one point, so he's very aware of the work we do. But also he came out with a very strong agenda at his inaugural event and really set out the goals that he wanted to accomplish when it came to immigrant issues. And so we're really happy with the work that he's been doing on this issue. And with Mayor Lightfoot, the same thing. We're really grateful that in the last month and a half, with all the threats around deportation enforcement, she came out, was out in the community passing out flyers. She was handing out one of our Know Your Rights flyers for small businesses and what to do in case ICE showed up at the business. And so she's been very helpful, very instrumental, and has been out in the community handing out this information. Right?
Okay, and so people watch you at home and they want to know, how can I get involved? How can I be a part of this? And one of the things that you've been helping a lot with is this Social Security letter that businesses got recently. What has your role been in that? So
in May of this year, the Social Security Administration restarted this practice of sending out no-match letters to employers. As of March of this year, about 600,000 letters were sent out to employers nationwide. Essentially what that letter states is that the SSA looks at the records and they realize that there's a mismatch for that employee's name or date of birth or Social Security number, and they'll notify the employer, hey, this doesn't match with our information, can you check your database? If the employer can't correct the issue, they have to talk to the employee and the employee has to take certain steps. The issue has been that we haven't seen these letters be issued for 7, 8 years now. And so we think that this is a part of sort of the enforcement rhetoric and sort of the fearful rhetoric. And we're really concerned that employers comply with the letter, but also do so in ways that doesn't violate or make them liable. For example, in that letter, it states that employers cannot take any adverse action against the employees simply for receiving that letter. Right. But recently we've heard of stories and reported in several publications that employers locally had taken adverse action against employees. So that's one of the things that we've been working on. So we're reaching out to employers, chambers to hand out this information, but also provide legal services on how to make sure you're following the rules and regulations. So if people get this issue or have this issue, you're one of the organizations that they can contact. And the information went up on the screen there about the coalition. Tell me the website one more time. IllinoisBIC.biz. Okay, great. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.